What if I told you there are sacred truths, hidden treasures of wisdom, that are not meant to be shared lightly? Have you ever felt the urge to confide in someone about your dreams, struggles, or victories, only to hesitate, sensing that some things are better kept within? There is a profound strength in silence, a spiritual armor that shields you from the storms of misunderstanding, envy, and unwarranted interference. In today's world, where everyone is quick to share every detail of their lives, standing apart in this way might just be one of the wisest choices you can make. If this resonates with you, stay with me as we delve into a message that could transform the way you approach your journey of faith. Before we begin, take a moment to subscribe to this channel, where we explore divine wisdom and spiritual insights to guide your walk with God. There is a lesson in the art of silence that is echoed throughout the scriptures and the experiences of those who walked in close communion with God. Think for a moment about the fragile beauty of a budding flower. Its growth happens in quiet, away from prying eyes, shielded from elements that might harm it before it blooms. Our spiritual journeys, dreams, and revelations often mirror this process. When we guard these moments and allow them to flourish in a protected space, we give them a chance to grow into their fullest potential. Imagine how many destinies have been thwarted, not because the dream was unworthy, but because it was exposed too soon. The enemy, ever watchful, uses what we reveal against us. The Bible speaks to this truth. Proverbs 29:11 says, "A fool gives full vent to his spirit, but a wise man quietly holds it back." Silence, then, is not just an absence of speech, but a deliberate act of wisdom. It allows God's plans for us to unfold without interference. Even Mary, the mother of Jesus, knew the importance of this principle. When the angel Gabriel visited her with the extraordinary news that she would bear the Savior, she did not run to announce it to the world. Instead, she treasured the revelation in her heart, nurturing it in silence until the time was right. This was not secrecy born of fear, but reverence for the magnitude of the promise. So often, we feel the urge to share our dreams or victories, to seek validation or celebrate prematurely. Yet, just as a seed must remain hidden in the soil before it can grow, our dreams must be protected in their early stages. When Joseph shared his dreams of greatness with his brothers, it led to jealousy, betrayal, and hardship. Though God ultimately fulfilled his purpose for Joseph, his story reminds us that timing and discretion are vital. It is not enough to have a vision. We must also have the wisdom to protect it. There is also power in how we approach the private matters of our lives, especially those involving our family. In a time when oversharing on social media has become commonplace, it is easy to forget the sacredness of the family unit. Not every disagreement, financial challenge, or personal struggle is meant for public consumption. By exposing these vulnerabilities, we risk inviting division, misunderstanding, or even spiritual attack. Proverbs reminds us that love covers a multitude of sins. Our role within our families is not to expose or shame, but to protect and nurture. Consider the story of Noah and his sons. After the flood, when Noah became intoxicated, his nakedness was exposed in a moment of human frailty. While one of his sons mocked him, the other two walked backward with a cloak to cover their father's shame. This act of love and discretion preserved the family's dignity. What if we approached our family struggles with the same care, seeking restoration rather than gossip or judgment? Keeping our family matters private allows God to work within those sacred relationships, bringing healing and reconciliation in His perfect timing. There is a lesson here that extends to our victories as well. It is natural to feel joy when God blesses us with breakthroughs, but wisdom teaches us to celebrate privately in the early stages. A first victory, whether it is a new job, a financial blessing, or a restored relationship, is precious and fragile. Rushing to announce it to the world can invite unnecessary scrutiny, jealousy, or spiritual attack. Early victories are like young plants. They need time to root and grow strong before they are exposed to the elements. Look at the example of David after he defeated Goliath. Though his victory was public, David did not boast or seek recognition prematurely. He allowed God to establish his triumph in his time. In contrast, consider King Hezekiah, who, in a moment of pride, showed the envoys from Babylon all the treasures of his kingdom. This act of boasting led to grave consequences, as the Babylonians later came to plunder what they had seen. These stories remind us that our victories are not just for our benefit, but for God's glory. When we guard them, we allow Him to establish them fully, shielding them from unnecessary opposition. Our finances are another area where discretion is key. In today's culture of sharing every new purchase or accomplishment, it is easy to fall into the trap of seeking validation through material displays. Yet, the Bible warns us against flaunting our wealth, for it can invite envy, manipulation, or even theft. The story of Hezekiah serves as a cautionary tale here as well. His choice to reveal his kingdom's riches ultimately led to their loss. Instead, when we view our financial blessings as gifts from God, entrusted to us for stewardship, we approach them with humility and gratitude. By keeping these matters private, we protect not only our resources, but also our hearts from pride. Spiritual encounters are perhaps the most sacred experiences we can have, and they too require discernment. Dreams, visions, or divine revelations are gifts meant to strengthen our faith and guide us on our path. However, not every spiritual encounter is meant to be shared. The Bible gives us examples of those who understood this. Paul, who was caught up into the third heaven, described hearing unspeakable things he was not permitted to reveal. John, in the book of Revelation, was instructed to seal up the words of the seven thunders and not write them down. These moments teach us that some divine mysteries are meant to remain between us and God, shaping us in the secret place. When we prematurely share sacred encounters, we risk diminishing their impact or exposing them to misunderstanding and criticism. Silence, in these cases, becomes a sanctuary for these revelations, allowing them to take root and bear fruit in God's timing. There is wisdom in meditating on these moments, praying over them, and waiting for God to reveal when and how to share them, if at all. The power of silence is not about withholding out of fear, but about guarding what is precious with wisdom and faith. It is about recognizing that not everything we experience is meant for the applause of men. By protecting our dreams, families, victories, finances, and spiritual encounters, we honor God and create space for His will to be fulfilled in our lives without interference. If this message has touched your heart, I encourage you to reflect on its truths and apply them to your own life. Let's build a community of faith and wisdom together. Be sure to subscribe to this channel for more insights and inspiration. And if you found value in this message, leave a comment below declaring, "I will walk in wisdom." May God's blessings and guidance be with you as you nurture the gifts He has entrusted to you. Stay tuned for the next part of this transformative journey, and until then, may peace and grace abound in your life. As we continue this journey of uncovering the power of silence, let us reflect on how it shapes our lives and draws us closer to the divine. Silence is not a passive act, but a powerful choice, one that shields us from unnecessary harm and creates space for God's plans to unfold in their fullness. It is a divine strategy, a spiritual discipline that requires intention and practice. As we move forward, let's dive deeper into the areas of life where silence serves as both a shield and a sanctuary. Imagine the delicate process of crafting something beautiful, a work of art, a symphony, or even a garden. These creations require focus, care, and an environment free from distractions. Similarly, when God places a dream, a vision, or a purpose in your heart, It is like a masterpiece in progress. Sharing these plans prematurely can disrupt their formation, leaving them vulnerable to external influences that can distort or derail them. Silence becomes the protective cocoon in which these divine gifts can grow. Take a moment to consider the story of Nehemiah, who was burdened with the task of rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem. When he first felt this calling, he didn't rush to announce his intentions. Instead, he prayed, fasted, and sought God's guidance in private. When the time came to act, he shared his plan with a select few who were committed to the same vision. By keeping his purpose hidden until it was ready to be revealed, Nehemiah protected the work from opposition until it was strong enough to withstand resistance. In our own lives, we often face the temptation to seek validation by sharing our plans with others. This need for affirmation can lead us to expose our dreams to those who may not understand or support them. Sometimes the people we share with, even unintentionally, can become sources of doubt or criticism. Their words, even if well-meaning, can plant seeds of uncertainty that hinder our progress. Instead, when we surrender our dreams to God and nurture them in prayer, we allow Him to strengthen them and guide us in His perfect timing. The same principle applies to our personal struggles. Life is filled with challenges, moments of uncertainty, pain, and even failure. While it is natural to seek comfort in others, we must be discerning about who we turn to for support. Not every ear is ready to hear, and not every heart is prepared to help. By choosing wisely whom to confide in, we protect ourselves from gossip, judgment, and unnecessary complications. Turning to God first in these moments allows us to find strength and clarity before seeking human counsel. Think of Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. Facing the weight of the cross, he chose to share his anguish with a select few disciples. But even then, his deepest cries were directed to the Father. This sacred intimacy with God reminds us that our greatest battles are often fought in the secret place, where no one but our Creator can see. It is in this quiet communion that we find the grace and courage to move forward, knowing that we are not alone. In today's world, where social media and constant communication dominate, guarding our hearts and minds has become more important than ever. Every post, every status update, and every tweet become a window into our lives, inviting opinions, assumptions, and even envy. While transparency and authenticity are valuable, we must recognize the boundaries that protect our spiritual, emotional, and mental well-being. Not every moment is meant for public display, and not every detail of our lives needs to be shared. Silence is not just about withholding, it is about choosing what to share, when, and with whom. It is about aligning our words and actions with God's purpose for us. This discipline is particularly important in moments of success. When we achieve a goal or receive a blessing, our first instinct might be to celebrate publicly. While joy is a natural response, wisdom teaches us to pause and reflect before sharing. Early success is like a tender sprout. It needs time to root itself firmly before it can withstand the winds of external pressures. Consider the story of King David before he ascended to the throne. Though anointed as king in his youth, David spent years in preparation, facing trials and opposition that shaped him into the leader God intended him to be. He did not demand recognition or force his way to power. Instead, he trusted God's timing and allowed his victories to speak for themselves when the time was right. This humility and patience are lessons for us as we navigate our own breakthroughs. When we guard our victories with wisdom, we protect them from being diminished by envy or sabotage. The enemy seeks to disrupt the blessings God has given us, using every opportunity to sow discord and doubt. By keeping our successes between ourselves and God, we allow Him to establish them fully, creating a foundation that cannot be shaken. There will come a time for celebration, but in those early stages, discretion is our safeguard. The way we handle our financial blessings also reflects our trust in God. In a culture that often equates worth with wealth, the temptation to flaunt our material success can be strong. Yet, the Bible reminds us that our true treasure lies in heaven, not in earthly possessions. By keeping our financial matters private, we demonstrate humility and a recognition that all we have comes from God. This mindset not only protects us from the pitfalls of pride, but also allows us to use our resources wisely, in alignment with God's will. The story of the widow's offering in the Gospel of Mark is a poignant example of this principle. While the wealthy gave large sums publicly, the widow quietly offered 2 small coins, everything she had. Jesus commended her not for the amount she gave, but for the heart with which she gave it. Her act of faith, performed in silence and humility, was a testament to her trust in God's provision. This story challenges us to approach our financial blessings with the same spirit of gratitude and discretion. Lastly, let us turn our attention to the sacredness of our spiritual encounters. These moments, whether they come in the form of dreams, visions, or divine revelations, are deeply personal and transformative. They are gifts from God, meant to guide us, comfort us, and draw us closer to Him. Yet not every encounter is meant to be shared. Some are intended to shape us privately, preparing us for the path ahead. Mary, the mother of Jesus, exemplifies this beautifully. When the shepherds came to worship the newborn Savior, they shared the message the angels had given them. Mary's response was not to proclaim this miracle to everyone, but to treasure these words in her heart and meditate on them. Her quiet reflection allowed her to fully grasp the magnitude of what God was doing in her life. This example teaches us the importance of nurturing our spiritual experiences in the quiet places of our hearts. When we guard our spiritual encounters, we protect them from being misunderstood or dismissed by those who may not share our faith. This does not mean we should never share our testimony. On the contrary, there are times when God calls us to speak boldly for His glory, but discernment is key. By waiting for His guidance, we ensure that our words carry the weight and timing of His purpose. As we journey together through these truths, remember that silence is not about isolation, but about intimacy with God. It is about creating space for Him to work in our lives, free from the noise and distractions of the world. By guarding our dreams, struggles, victories, finances, and spiritual encounters, we honor the sacredness of His gifts and align ourselves with His will. If this message has encouraged you, take a moment to subscribe to this channel and share it with others who might need this reminder. Leave a comment below declaring, "I will walk in wisdom and silence." Together, let us embrace the power of discretion, trusting that in the quiet, God is at work in ways we cannot yet see. Stay tuned for the next part of this series, and may His peace and blessings abound in your life. As we continue exploring the profound strength found in silence, it's essential to understand that discretion is not a sign of weakness, but a mark of spiritual maturity. To guard what God has entrusted to us, we must embrace the discipline of holding back, nurturing what is sacred until the right time. This act of intentional silence becomes an offering of faith, trusting that God will reveal all things in His perfect way. If you're ready to dive deeper into this transformative truth, let's continue together. Think about the hidden process of growth in nature. A seed buried in the soil remains unseen for a time, enduring darkness and pressure as it begins to sprout. It doesn't announce its presence immediately, but waits until it's ready to break through the surface, strong enough to reach for the light. Our spiritual journeys often follow the same pattern. Whether it's a dream, a breakthrough, or a moment of divine revelation, much of God's work in our lives happens beneath the surface, away from public view. By keeping these sacred processes private, we allow them the space they need to grow. The Bible often uses the imagery of planting and harvesting, to describe the timing of God's plans. Ecclesiastes 3:1 reminds us, "There is a time for everything, and a season for every activity under the heavens." To rush ahead of God's timing is to risk uprooting what has only just begun to take root. When Joseph shared his dreams prematurely, it led to betrayal by his brothers. Though God ultimately brought those dreams to fulfillment, Joseph's story serves as a cautionary tale about the importance of timing and discretion. Silence is not about withholding joy, but about protecting the fragile beginnings of something greater. When God gives us a vision, it is often in its rawest, most vulnerable form. Sharing it too soon can expose it to doubts, misunderstandings, and attacks. It's not just about protecting ourselves, but about honoring the sanctity of what God has entrusted to us. By nurturing these moments in prayer and reflection, we allow God to shape them into what He intended. This principle also applies to the way we handle adversity. Life's challenges often come with a temptation to seek validation through sharing our struggles publicly. While there is nothing wrong with seeking support from trusted individuals, broadcasting our hardships can sometimes amplify them. Instead, bringing our burdens to God first allows us to process them through His perspective. In this private communion, we find clarity, strength, and direction. Consider the example of Jesus during His ministry. When He performed miracles or withdrew to pray, He often instructed those around Him not to speak of what they had seen. This wasn't because His works were meant to be hidden forever, but because He understood the importance of timing and context. Each miracle, each act of divine power, was part of a greater narrative that needed to unfold in God's time. By following His example, we learn to prioritize divine timing over human urgency. In our modern world, the pressure to share every aspect of our lives can be overwhelming. Social media, while a powerful tool for connection, can also become a platform for oversharing. It's easy to fall into the trap of seeking validation through likes and comments, forgetting that our worth is not determined by public approval, but by God's unchanging love. When we guard our private lives, we free ourselves from this cycle and create space for deeper connection with God and those closest to us. The power of silence is especially evident in moments of victory. Achieving a long-awaited goal or receiving an unexpected blessing fills us with joy, and our natural response is often to share that joy with others. But wisdom teaches us to pause and reflect before making our victories public. Early successes, like young plants, are most vulnerable when they are newly realized. By keeping them private, we allow them to grow stronger, shielded from unnecessary scrutiny or envy. David's story offers a powerful example of this principle. Though anointed as king while still a shepherd, he spent years in preparation, facing trials and opposition that refined his character and deepened his faith. David didn't demand recognition or force his way onto the throne. Instead, he trusted God's timing and allowed each victory to build upon the last. When he finally became king, his reign was firmly established because it was grounded in God's plan. The story of King Hezekiah, on the other hand, serves as a warning about the dangers of boasting. After God miraculously healed him, Hezekiah showed the envoys from Babylon all the treasures of his kingdom. This act of pride ultimately led to the loss of those very treasures. His story reminds us that our blessings are not ours to flaunt, but to steward with humility and gratitude. Another area where discretion is crucial is in the realm of finances. Wealth, whether great or small, can become a source of pride if not handled with care. In a culture that often equates success with material possessions, the temptation to showcase financial achievements can be strong. Yet the Bible warns us against storing up treasures on earth, where they are vulnerable to decay and theft. Instead, we are called to store up treasures in heaven, living with an eternal perspective. When we keep our financial matters private, we protect ourselves from envy, manipulation, and misplaced priorities. More importantly, we demonstrate our trust in God as our provider. The widow's offering in Mark's Gospel is a beautiful illustration of this truth. Her quiet act of faith, giving all she had without seeking recognition, reflects a heart fully surrendered to God. This story challenges us to approach our own financial decisions with the same humility and generosity. Finally, let us reflect on the sacredness of spiritual encounters. These moments, whether they come through dreams, visions, or other divine revelations, are deeply personal and transformative. They are gifts meant to draw us closer to God and guide us on our journey of faith. However, not every encounter is meant to be shared. Some are given for our private growth, shaping us in ways that only God can understand. The Bible offers numerous examples of individuals who guarded their spiritual encounters with care. Paul, for instance, speaks of being caught up into the third heaven, where he heard things too sacred to share. John, in the book of Revelation, was instructed to seal up the words of the seven thunders and not write them. These examples remind us that some divine revelations are meant to remain between us and God, treasured in the quiet places of our heart. When we guard our spiritual encounters, we honor their sacredness and protect them from being trivialized or misunderstood. This doesn't mean we should never share our testimony. On the contrary, there are times when God calls us to speak boldly for His glory. But discernment is key. By waiting for His guidance, we ensure that our words carry the weight and timing of His purpose. As we embrace the discipline of silence, we create space for God to work in our lives in ways we cannot yet see. This journey is not about isolating ourselves, but about deepening our intimacy. By guarding our dreams, struggles, victories, finances, and spiritual encounters, we align ourselves with His will and allow His plans to unfold in their full. If this message has resonated with you, I invite you to take a moment to subscribe to this channel. Let's continue to grow together in wisdom and leave a comment below declaring, "I will trust in God's timing." Remember, the power of silence is not in what we withhold, but in what we nurture in the presence of our Creator. Stay tuned for the next part of this journey, and may God's peace and blessings be with you always. The journey into understanding the transformative power of silence continues, offering deeper insights into why this spiritual discipline is. Silence is not simply the absence of noise. It is a deliberate choice, an act of faith, and a sign of maturity. It demonstrates our trust in God's plan and our willingness to wait for His perfect time. In a world that celebrates constant communication and immediate gratification, choosing silence sets us apart as people of faith who walk to the rhythm of God's time. Picture a potter at work, shaping clay on the wheel. The process is intricate and purposeful, requiring careful attention and patience. If the clay were rushed into the fire before its form was complete, the vessel would crack and Similarly, the dreams and plans God places in our hearts must be nurtured and refined before they are ready to be revealed. Silence is the time spent on the potter's wheel, allowing us to be shaped and prepared for the purpose God has designed. This principle is seen throughout the Bible, where many of God's chosen ones were called to seasons of quiet preparation. Think of Moses, who spent 40 years in the wilderness before returning to Egypt to lead the Israelites to freedom. Or Jesus, who spent 30 years in obscurity before beginning His public ministry. These periods of silence were not wasted. They were essential times of growth and intimacy with God. In the same way, we must embrace the quiet seasons of our lives, trusting that God is working behind the scenes to prepare us for what is to come. One of the most compelling examples of this is found in the story of Esther. When Esther was chosen to be queen, she did not immediately reveal her Jewish heritage. Instead, she followed her cousin Mordecai's advice and kept her identity hidden until the right moment. When the time came to speak, her silence turned into words of courage that saved her people. Esther's story reminds us that there is wisdom in waiting and power in speaking only when the time is right. In our lives, we often feel the urge to rush ahead, to speak before we are ready, or to act without full understanding. Yet, by embracing silence, we align ourselves with God's timing and allow His purpose to unfold. This is not always easy, especially in moments of hardship or uncertainty. It takes faith to remain silent when we want answers or validation. But in those moments, silence becomes a sanctuary where we can hear God's voice and gain clarity. The world around us often views silence as a sign of weakness or indecision, but in the kingdom of God, it is a mark of strength. When we choose to remain silent, we are saying, "Lord, I trust that your plans are better than mine, and that your timing is perfect." This act of surrender opens the door for God to work in ways we could never imagine. This surrender is particularly important when it comes to the words we speak. The Bible warns us repeatedly about the power of the tongue. Proverbs 18:21 says, "The tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruit." Our words can build up or tear down, bring life or cause harm. By practicing silence, we learn to use our words wisely, speaking only what is true, helpful, and glorifying to God. In moments of anger or frustration, silence can be a shield that protects us from saying things we might regret. When faced with criticism or misunderstanding, silence allows us to respond with grace rather than defense. And in times of joy or success, silence can be a humble acknowledgement that all good things come from God. One of the greatest challenges of silence is resisting the urge to seek validation from others. Social media has amplified this struggle, creating a culture where sharing every detail of our lives has become the norm. While there is nothing inherently wrong with sharing, we must be mindful of our motives. Are we sharing to inspire and encourage, or are we seeking approval and affirmation? When we find our identity in Christ, we are freed from the need to seek validation from the world. The story of Daniel provides a powerful example of someone who lived with quiet confidence in God. When faced with a decree to stop praying, Daniel did not make a public spectacle of his faith. Instead, he continued to pray in private, trusting God to protect him. His silent obedience spoke louder than any words could have, and ultimately led to a miraculous deliverance. Daniel's story challenges us to live with the same quiet confidence, knowing that our faithfulness to God is enough. This principle of silent confidence also applies to how we handle criticism and opposition. Jesus, during his trial and crucifixion, exemplified this perfectly. Despite false accusations and harsh treatment, he remained silent, trusting that God's will would prevail. His silence was not weakness, but a profound demonstration of strength and trust in the Father. In our own lives, we can follow his example by choosing silence in the face of misunderstanding, trusting that God will vindicate us in his time. Silence is also a powerful tool in our relationships. In a world that often encourages us to speak our minds, silence can be a countercultural act of love and understanding. When we listen more than we speak, we create space for others to be heard and valued. When we choose not to retaliate in anger, we break the cycle of conflict and open the door for reconciliation. And when we pray silently for those who hurt us, we align our hearts with God's love and mercy. In marriage, family, and friendships, silence can be a bridge that connects rather than divides. By holding back hurtful words and choosing instead to listen, we create an environment of trust and respect. This doesn't mean avoiding important conversations or ignoring issues that need to be addressed. Rather, it means approaching those conversations with wisdom, patience, and a heart surrendered to God. The discipline of silence also deepens our intimacy with God. When we quiet our hearts and minds, we create space to hear his voice. Psalm 46:10 invites us to be still and know that I am God. In the stillness, we are reminded of his sovereignty, his love, and his faithfulness. Silence becomes a sacred meeting place where we can pour out our hearts to him and receive his peace. As we conclude this reflection on the power of silence, let us remember that it is not about suppressing our voices or hiding our struggle. Rather, it is about stewarding the gifts, challenges, and revelations God has given us with wisdom and faith. Silence is a spiritual discipline that protects what is sacred, aligns us with God's timing, and opens the door for His plans to unfold. If this message has spoken to your heart, take a moment to subscribe to this channel and join our community of faith. Leave a comment below declaring, "I will embrace the strength of silence." Let us continue to walk together in wisdom and grace, trusting that God is at work in the quiet places of our lives. Stay tuned for the final part of this series, where we will bring everything together in a powerful conclusion. Until then, may God's peace and blessings be with you always. As we reach the conclusion of this journey into the transformative power of silence, it's time to reflect on everything we've learned. Silence is not merely the absence of speech. It is an active, intentional, and spiritual practice that strengthens our walk with God. It is a shield for our dreams, a sanctuary for our struggles, and a foundation for our victories. By embracing silence, we invite God to work in ways that exceed our understanding and align our lives with His perfect plan. Let us revisit the profound lessons we have explored. First, silence protects our dreams and plans. Like seeds planted in fertile soil, our dreams need time to take root before they are exposed to the elements. When we resist the urge to share prematurely, we allow God to shape those dreams and prepare the path for their fulfillment. This practice teaches us patience and trust, reminding us that God's timing is always perfect. Second, silence safeguards our families. In a world of oversharing, keeping family matters private creates a safe space for healing, reconciliation, and growth. The sacredness of family relationships is best preserved when we handle conflicts with love, discretion, and prayer. By guarding our households against unnecessary scrutiny, we protect the unity and peace that God desires for our families. Third, silence strengthens our victories. Early successes are fragile, like young plants that need protection before they can thrive. Celebrating privately allows us to savor these moments with gratitude and humility, acknowledging that all blessings come from God. By waiting for the right time to share, we shield our victories from envy and opposition, ensuring they are firmly rooted in God's purpose. Fourth, silence honors the sacredness of our financial blessings. Choosing to keep financial matters private demonstrates humility and a focus on eternal treasures rather than earthly possessions. This discretion protects us from pride, envy, and unnecessary complications, allowing us to steward our resources wisely and in alignment with God's will. Finally, silence preserves the sanctity of our spiritual encounters. Dreams, visions, and divine revelations are gifts meant to deepen our relationship with God. By keeping these experiences hidden until the right time, we honor their sacredness and allow them to shape us privately. When God calls us to share, our testimony will carry the weight and authority of His purpose. The overarching theme of silence is trust in God's timing, His plans, and His provision. When we choose silence, we demonstrate our faith in Him, knowing that He is the author and finisher of our story. Silence is not weakness. It is strength rooted in humility, wisdom, and reverence for God. As you move forward in your journey, I encourage you to make silence a regular part of your spiritual practice. Use it to guard your dreams, nurture your relationships, and deepen your intimacy with God. Remember that silence is not about hiding. It is about protecting what is sacred and allowing God's will to unfold in His perfect timing. If this series has touched your heart, I invite you to take a moment to subscribe to this channel. By joining our community, you'll receive more insights and encouragement to help you grow in your faith. If this message resonated with you, comment below with "I trust in God's timing," as a declaration of your commitment to walking in wisdom and silence. And don't forget to like this video and share it with someone who might need this message today. Thank you for being a part of this journey. May the lessons of silence guide you, and may God's peace and blessings fill your life abundantly. Until we meet again, stay strong, stay faithful, and always trust in the power of God's perfect timing.